Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Reload. Wow, what a crowd. What a crowd that we have today. That was very cheesy. Regardless, though, welcome everybody to The Reload, episode number 9. It's actually crazy to think about. Like, we have already had 9 different The Reload episodes, which is crazy. It's awesome, and I could not thank you guys enough for tuning in. Whether this is your first ever time listening to The Reload, or if it has been, in fact, your 9th time. I really do appreciate, but welcome everybody to The Reload by Prediction. I'm Landon LandO Sanders, and thank you for joining us today on the Esports Video Talk Show Network. You can find The Reload live every Tuesday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time on twitch.tv/Prediction Esports, as well as on YouTube and now on iTunes. Make sure to find all of our podcasts and shows there. We'll have links in the chat that can direct you there if need be. Prediction does offer you the chance to learn and converse on more in-depth subjects about all of the latest and greatest esports, from NBA 2K to Overwatch to Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and obviously to Call of Duty. We are expanding rapidly each and every week, and feel free to let us know what games you guys would like to see us get involved with next. Get involved on social media. Tweet at us at Prediction. That's 2 E's involved in that one. But boy, do we have a interesting and a great show to talk about today. A lot of speculation kind of being involved. We're going to be talking on the Modern Warfare Alpha. Kind of my thoughts on that one, how we're looking at franchising next year, as this will be the title to be looking out for. Along with that, we've also got to be discussing the possible move of Scump to Team EnVy, how that would work, the logistics behind it, etc. And then we'll obviously be kind of talking on a few other things, kind of rounding out the franchise talk. There's a ton of different things to really kind of go over today in terms of ideal franchise locations, what spots were kind of announced. I know what yesterday, Ogre 2 was announced to be joining Florida as the GM, so that's awesome to see. So there's a ton of different stuff that we can dive into. But guys, kind of throughout the entirety of the show, feel free, right? Obviously, if you're listening on iTunes, you can't. But if you're here on Twitch, type in the chat. Let us know what your thoughts are on a certain subject. If I bring something up, feel free to get involved in the chat. I'd love to kind of hear your guys' thoughts on certain things. We can kind of get a few conversations going. But I do apologize to the folks on iTunes. Maybe sometime in the future, Apple will come up with a process to include a chat in some capacity, which I'm not sure how easy that would be. But maybe I'll just start DMing people, possibly. But let's go and talk about the Modern Warfare Alpha, right? We got to play the 2v2 this past weekend. For those that don't know, there was an alpha for Modern Warfare this past weekend, and it pretty much allowed for anybody to play the game's new 2v2 gunfight mode, which you pretty much are able to play with a ton of different random variants for weapons. I mean, I think at one point there were 5 different maps that you could play on. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. I actually did. I thoroughly enjoyed playing this particular mode quite a bit for the most part. And this was the same game that I pretty much played at Champs, so there was nothing really all that majorly different about it. I will say the weapons felt really good. I thought there was a decent amount of recoil. However, for me, that isn't really the major concern, or really that isn't kind of a major concern for me whatsoever. I think it's fine if the weapons maybe have more recoil than previously. I don't really mind the decent amount of change up that we're going to get. But the movement definitely feels heavy. And that was something that I noticed whenever I was at Champs. That was something that I instantly kind of recognized was, wow, the movement feels a little bit different in comparison to other titles. And I gotta say, in terms of movement, in terms of the way the game works, I'm still not a fan of the leaning feature. Leaning for me is just not at all something that I want to be invested with. And I want to hear your guys' thoughts as well in the chat. And feel free, like I said, let us know on Twitter, let us know on every single social media that we're live on, especially YouTube as well. You guys get involved in the comments what your favorite weapon was in the Modern Warfare Alpha, because I feel like I was the only person who was talking about the M13. The M13 did not move at all. It literally was like more accurate than the ACR back in MW2, which I do not say super willingly. It did not move, especially with certain attachments on it. Like, I think there was at one point you had an ACOG type sight. You also had a suppressor on it. It did not move an inch. And with all the weapons and maybe how crazy the recoil is in comparison to everything else, I thought that it was great. I thought that it was by far, for me at least, one of the, if not the best weapon in the entire game, or at least in the entire alpha up to this point. But I also enjoyed rocking the MP7. I thought the AK was fun. Like I said, the M13, I think for me had to be the strongest. I don't think you can really label out or throw out another answer that would be somewhat comparable. But I also felt that snipers were somewhat hard to use, probably because I'm terrible at the game, which does kind of make a lot more sense if you really think about it that way. But I thought the snipers were pretty fun. I kind of somewhat enjoyed the maps. For me, in terms of what my favorite map was, I really don't know. I don't. I like Speedball. I was not a fan of Docks. I forget a few of the other like exact names, but I was not a big fan of Docks whatsoever. Probably just because I wasn't good on it. But I kind of like the King one. I thought the King one was good. I got to play that quite a bit when it came down to champs. That was kind of like the go-to. I'm not a fan of I forget the jungle. Is it Pine? I think it's called Pine. Not a fan of that map whatsoever, just based off the textures, based off the FPS issues. They kind of kept rolling through. And in Gym Class, Danny says his favorite weapon was the MP7. I like that one. That was personally my favorite SMG at COD Champs as well. A lot of people were kind of giving a lot of credit, saying, like, oh, you got to try out the MP5. Oh, you got to try out this. I was like, MP7 all the way. So I'm definitely with you on that one, Danny. But kind of getting out from this conversation and moving into the next one, there were a lot of people after the alpha was kind of in the midst of being played upon, and these topics were thrown out again, saying, is Modern Warfare taking aspects from Rainbow Six? And I would respond with, of course it is. Why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they take things from their competition? For those who don't know, Rainbow Six, fantastic game. I'm not like the biggest fan of playing it because you have to invest a lot of time into it. So that's the way that I kind of look at Rainbow Six. Is it's a great game. I think in terms of esports, it's definitely kind of on the rise more. It is a very strategic FPS, one that is obviously on console as well. So I'm a big fan of that. But it wouldn't surprise me if that is what Modern Warfare's goal is to do. We look at other games because this is like not here. I'll roll back to that one, but this is not an uncommon thing for a developer or a game to try and take other aspects from their competition. It happens all the time. That's the way that everything works. So the way that I would respond to that question in terms of people saying, oh my gosh, this game is so similar to Rainbow Six. I can't believe they're taking this aspect. I can't believe they're taking this animation or the way that this gun works. Of course they are. Of course they're trying to take similarities from Rainbow Six because they would be dumb not to. Not only the weight of how the character moves is similar, but the weapons, the way they recoil is similar. The aspect of leaning is also very similar, which we've had leaning previously when it came down to Call of Duty and Ghosts. But still, even the idea of breaching doors, the list goes on. And what's crazy, and people don't realize this, what's crazy is that this isn't the first time that they have done that. This isn't the first time that they have tried to take an aspect from another game. More specifically, Rainbow Six. If you really want to go back and be super specific, they have done this before. Do we not remember the war mode back in World War II where people went crazy? This isn't me. This is when people went crazy. This was Reddit posts. These were people going out there and saying, I cannot believe that they are taking the way that you set up walls in terms of defense like how you do in Rainbow Six. Do we not remember that? The war mode where the tank would start to kind of move forward. It's very similar to an Overwatch Rainbow Six crossover. Very odd. We've done the exact same thing this year. We've also labeled this as an Overwatch Rainbow Six type crossover, which, goodness sake, it probably is. So this isn't the first time that we've done stuff like this. And this won't be the last time that we also take things from other games as well. I act as if I'm a developer, but you kind of get the aspect of it. So like whenever that was out there, people went crazy. So I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all that we are seeing a ton of different things in Modern Warfare, this new engine coming out, and we're starting to see similarities, the way that things work. It's just not really surprising. And also, if we want to be ultra specific on stuff, let's not forget what other FPS doesn't have a mini map. Do we know which one that is? Oh, that's right. Rainbow Six. Okay, we'll move on, at least in certain modes. You get my point. We could go on for hours about how similar Call of Duty is starting to become to a little bit of its competition. Because, like I said, it's just the way that it rolls. It's not surprising. It's not crazy. And Gym Class Danny also put in the chat, said, also remember Alpha had no weapon attachments or perks that enhance the weapon and movement. That is very true. And I'm glad that he brings that up on the topic of Modern Warfare, the way that we got to play the alpha, just because obviously it is very similar to Rainbow Six, but at the same time, and this is something that I've also brought up too, so I'm glad that Danny called this one out. is that movement isn't as slow as people are deeming it to be. So while it is similar to other games that we can throw out there, the heaviness as well, you also got to consider that we're not playing the full game, as well as we also only play 2v2s. So for me, I don't know. It's just, for me, the experience of the alpha, I really enjoyed a lot. I thought that it was great. I really enjoyed my time to play the 2v2, but I can't deem a real solid opinion in terms of, will this be the game? Will this be the future of Call of Duty esports? Is this a game that we're going to look back on and say, wow, that was a really good title? Like, I think we honestly will in Black Ops 4. I thought that Black Ops 4, I wasn't the biggest fan of playing it. To be honest, I've loved every single Black Ops title, but at the same time, though, this was probably my least favorite Black Ops title that we have had to date. Black Ops 1, my favorite. Black Ops 2, my second favorite. Black Ops 3, my third favorite in terms of just Black Ops games. So, like I said, I'm not really overall surprised by this. And I think that we may look back on this one, Black Ops 4, and say, wow, we really had something special. But will we say that about Modern Warfare? Who knows? And I will say this too, and I know I mentioned this and kind of addressed it earlier, but I've even seen a few people talking about this on Twitter more specifically, saying, should we be worried that Call of Duty devs are taking things from other games? Should we be worried that they're taking inspiration from other games? No, absolutely not. Not at all. If anything, it shows that they have an interest in their competition. The major problem, and I'm kind of rounding this back to what I was talking about earlier when it came down to Fortnite. The problem that I think a lot of organizations or games are running into is that they struggle to keep the longevity of a viewer or a player in their game. The major problem Fortnite, I think, is running into is that they have no real competition to deal with as of this moment. Competition is great, getting back to that aspect. Competition is wonderful. The problem that Fortnite has is that they have no competition being at the top as of this moment, so that allows for them to run rampant with how they feel the game should work. I think turbo building was pretty much removed today, which is crazy for me to think about. In terms of allowing everyone to have a great gaming experience, that can't work at the same time for esports. So, going from title to title, you should be happy, as this is an ultimate sign of competition. Taking things from your competition is a very common thing in the world of media and the world of sports. It's not crazy, it's not absurd, and I think for me this ultimately makes sense. But I want to get on the idea of the mini-map. Before I do that, this leads me into my take of the week presented by TickPick. If you're interested, or rather if you are ever in search of getting tickets for sports games, concerts, etc., look no further than TickPick. You can easily get your tickets while also having no hidden fees. Check out tickpick.com/bluewire. Again, that's tickpick.com/bluewire for $15 off your first ticket. This is the way that I look at Call of Duty right now, is that in terms of the mini-map conversation, it worries me when we try and take away staples of the game. It starts to get in scary territory, because Call of Duty is becoming somewhat stale, and that's just by the average person's opinion. It's becoming somewhat stale. The esport is currently listed as what I would consider fragile. You move it around too much, you start shaking it a little bit, and you start to break it. It's hard to take something away that has already been in the game since its infancy, right? We talk about the minimap. It's not as if you're bringing something in and then taking it away. You're taking something out that has been in the game since the very, very beginning. And that's what starts to worry me a little bit more in regards to this, is that this is such a staple of the game that everyone looks at as on the regular HUD. Like, you just look at this always, and it is an indicator for how you maneuver yourself throughout the map. It's, for me, going to hurt, but at the same time, like, I look at it this way. Instead of giving some signs of awarding skill to other players, this, for me, gets rid of that. It almost makes everybody run around as if they have to figure everything out. So I don't know if this idea of what they have labeled as trying to get rid of the minimap as equaling out the average player, I think maybe in the beginning it'll be like that, but as time goes on, you pick up the game and you have no idea what's happening. And if anything, it's going to help players who grind more, because they're going to learn the maps, they're going to learn the spawns. For the average player, I think that is kind of like their safety net, their life vest for how they maneuver around the map, is by having that around. So I don't know. Like I said, I know the minimap is still up in conversation. It's not 100% out or anything like that, but I know it's not supposed to be in the 2v2 mode from my knowledge, but it does worry me a decent amount. But why is Call of Duty struggling the way that it is? Why is it at times having struggles? Why is it having struggles staying relevant? Why are we being super careful about what we take away rather than to experiment? The time for experimenting in terms of Call of Duty is beginning to run out. The reason why that is because of Call of Duty's yearly cycle. A benefit, yes, but at the same time, a major negative, not only just for esports, but for the game itself. What are games nowadays having success in doing? What are the major draws for playing a game like Fortnite, which is starting to kind of go down a little bit, but you kind of get my point. What are the major draws for playing a game like Fortnite, Minecraft, even right now, WoW Classic? They give you a game that you always have something to do. The Battle Pass, the idea of earning skins. Every day you come back to Fortnite and there's something different, positive or negative, depending on who you are. Minecraft, a simple formula, but no matter what, there is always something to work on. WoW Classic, we literally don't even get into this. There's always something to do, always something to work on, always something to grind. When it comes to Call of Duty, the same formula has been so overused and hardly worked on that the sequence has started to run its course. The Call of Duty cycle of a game every year that doesn't allow for much innovation or enough time to make the game, it lasts for, 4 to 6 months. Now, I'm obviously not saying, and I'm not obviously a game designer, but the one thing that will dramatically help the game's life cycle and help make this year ultimately successful for me is the maps. Constant grinding opportunities, new game modes, etc. I think if they make the games competitive, or rather the maps competitive, that ultimately changes and makes the entirety of this game a lot more successful. There's a reason why Counter-Strike is considered one of the most competitive games of all time. The maps. Sure, the weapons are balanced, but that takes some time. But we don't consider how important the maps are. How useful is a basketball without a hoop and a court? How useful is a baseball when there's no bases or objectives? Maps for me will continue to allow the Call of Duty lifecycle to live on for a successful first year for a competitive franchise. That has been my take of the week by TickPick. Like I said, for me, this is interesting because I think the maps overall will help out the Call of Duty lifecycle. It'll make it competitive. It'll make it fun. And if there were to be a mini map, you throw it out, you throw it in, whatever it may be. I think for me, the maps are going to play crucial, not just for Call of Duty's advancing lifecycle, but also for the first year of franchising. I think that's a massive thing to be thinking about. I know it kind of involves a lot of different moving pieces, but I think that for me is the most important thing. We talk about all of these different subjects. Really, if the game isn't fun, there's a big problem for franchising. So maps are the focus. That is what my major spotlight is on. The 2v2 mode doesn't really matter all as much. For me, the maps have to be good. They can't allow for overpowered spots. They have to be based on competitive in my eyes. To a certain extent, I'm not asking them to make everything competitive because obviously the competitive fan base is only a very small percentage in comparison to the regular fan base. But at the same time, the maps for me are going to be interesting. And remember, at TickPick, get every ticket and rather no hidden fees along with it. You can check out tickpick.com/bluewire for $15 off your first ticket. Again, that's tickpick.com/bluewire. And now, Junkhead, I actually called it out. Junkhead1324 says, good maps equal a good COD. I agree 100% with that statement. I think that for me is one of the most important things to be discussing moving into a new title, moving into what should be a very important Modern Warfare and what could change the entire face of competitive. Because this year, like I said, it's a fragile year. It's an important year. A lot of questions going on. A lot of things that people are uncertain about. And I think if the maps, what you're kind of playing on, that is going to be the defining factor for a lot of stuff. Like I said, when it comes to basketball, when it comes to baseball, every other subject, there are so many things that people just don't take into consideration. It's a matter of, oh, well, how do the maps work? Or rather, how do the weapons work? How does this work? Are we going to have specialists? For me, specialists, everything would be totally different depending on how the maps work. Like I said, that's just the way that I look at it. So let's go and move on to the next one. Let's go and move on to the next one. Maze's Realm, shout out Maze, says, interesting takes. Can I get $15 off a ticket to Call of Duty wait, what is that? Can I get $15 off a ticket to call into the show? Oh, I see. That'd be interesting, huh, Maze? I think we should work that out. I think we should work out a way to maybe have a few people call in the future. I think that'd be great. Who knows? Maybe that's a good idea. Maybe you'll spark something new that could be something to talk about in the future. Let's go and move on, right? The overwhelming subject as of this moment, people are talking about it. I've been seeing constant Reddit posts, Twitter threads, videos being made about this subject. the idea of Scump going to Dallas, in parentheses, EnVy. And we need to talk about this move some more because, like I said, there's been a ton of different reports from multitude of different sources claiming that Scump may or may not be on the move from Optic to another organization. Now, that organization, I believe personally, this is my personal take. The organization that I believe, in fact, will be Dallas. That is for me at least one of the targets. And I want to try and get in the same mindset as Scump for a second because you have to consider the way that he works, the way that his position is right now. And when you're in this process too, you have to be mindful of the future. You have to be mindful of your current position and what is going to make players, more specifically Scump in this situation, want to go toward your spot. Because you know what? From my knowledge, a lot of these positions, a lot of these locations are nice. They're not always going to be based in the location that they're labeling it as. So I think for me, it's important to get a good kind of flow going because location, I don't think, is as important as a lot of people deem it to be because a lot of these places, a lot of these locations aren't going to be where they say that they are. So my recent experience, I'm going to try and become Scump for a second. This is his mindset as of this moment, at least what I think would be his mindset. So I'm going to kind of tap into that for a second. So my recent experience with organizations haven't been great. So what do I want? If I'm Scump, what do I want? And personally, I want a few things. I want a good team. Obviously, you want to win, right? Winning's always nice. I want good organization relations because obviously I haven't had that recently. I want some familiarity. It's not going to be easy, right? It's not going to be easy for me to get over to this position. It's not going to be easy for me to transfer over to another organization. So I want some familiarity with me a little bit. I also want, most importantly, stability, right? Stability, a lot of people don't evaluate that in esports. Stability is one of the most important things in the entirety of it because stability is not always guaranteed in terms of being a pro. A lot of pros are instantly kind of thrown out in the scene. So having stability in some capacity with his prior experience is crucial. So first of all, like I said, a good team. Dallas, what are you going to give me? What are you going to put on the table that makes me just say, oh, I cannot dodge Dallas as of this moment? Well, Dallas already has Hook. They loan gunless, and they have very high odds that they may have them both moving into next season, which is crazy to think about. So if I am Scump, I'm thinking, really? Me? Hook? Gunless? That's already a good roster. That's already a really, really good team. I actually like the idea of that a lot. And for those who might be thinking, wait, Gunless, that's not a possibility. Now, I know that Luminosity has not been in the overall conversations of getting a franchise for next year. I still think it's in the conversation. I still think it's in limbo. But I think if there is an organization that has a great chance of getting him, it was the team that previously had him on loan. The team that he labeled as was a family as soon as he walked through the doors of the EnVy HQ. I think that Gunless almost will be a lock. And that is the reason why I mentioned that when EnVy loaned Hook to Splice, they got Gunless from LG. That was a move for franchising. Did it make sense in terms of the title? No, but it wasn't meant to. It was meant to get them together in the future. I think that for me, that was a perfect move, and that possibly could allow for Hook and Gunless to want to draw other major profile players. For me, that's what makes sense. So already you're thinking about 3 players. That's already a great move, right? Me, Hook, Gunless. Me being Scump in this situation. Next, what I want if I'm Scump, I want good organization relations, right? A brand like EnVy, one of the few that has managed to keep the same identity, one of the few that has done franchising and investments correctly. Oh, that would be lovely. That would be wonderful to not have to deal with that. This is a brand that has a history in esports. This is a brand that I know that I can trust because I know a few people on the other side, which brings me next to familiarity. Oh, my good buddy Hastro. Man, it has been a long time since we have been together. A longtime friend, a decade of history, a guy who used to be a pro himself. Also, he was the one that I went to when things at Optic started to go astray in the first place. Started to go astray in the very beginning stage. This is the guy that I went to back in Call of Duty Ghosts when Optic could not get me what I wanted. I wanted Nate shot out of there, and what happened? I went to EnVy. Now, did he obviously go to Optic? Yes. But at the same time, you have to consider, who did he instantly think about? The boys in blue. That was the first organization that he went to. So in terms of familiarity, he technically has been on this team previously. He has a very good history with Hastro. Lastly, most importantly, Scump saying, listen, I've had it rough. I have. This last year and a half has been one of the worst times in my life. I was not able to focus on competitive as much as I wanted. I was in the midst of moving. I was in the midst of maybe siphoning, changing up our roster a little bit. All I want is a spot that allows me to not have to worry about my contracts, not have to make me worry about my future as a pro. All I want to do is just play some Call of Duty. I just want to play some Call of Duty. I want to have some, some amazing moments and to bring this, to particular location, this particular brand, a championship. Also, by the way, I did just buy a house, which happens to be in Texas, more specifically, Dallas. So, in terms of everything we've talked about, I've got a really good team. If we can get Gunless on board, that would make it a lot nicer for me, right? We've got Gunless, we've got Hook, we've got myself, and then who do we go for next? It's probably up to me. I'm probably going to be a major factor in that. Kind of a LeBron type situation when he goes to LA. He's involved with a few of the roster changes to that extent. At least that's what I would imagine that they would do. So I've got a good team. I've got great organization, relations. I've got a brand that's previously worked in esports. They have a solid history behind them. I've got familiarity. Why? Because I've got Hastro on my side. I've also got maybe a few guys in the EnVy camp who I've previously worked with to a certain extent. And most importantly, I've got stability. I've got a long-time franchise. I've got a brand who's done it right. And I've also don't have to move. I don't have to move an inch. All I got to do is just stay in my house. One that it took me forever to kind of get my feet into, and so I don't have to move. I don't have to move an inch, and now I've got a brand with me that makes everything that much simpler. So I think that there will be other targets. I don't think this is 100% of a lock. I don't think this is one thing that is guaranteed, but I think for Scump, this has to be in your options. For me, all of those things that I listed out maybe are just a few that are rolling through the mind. The miner says, Scump to EnVy makes too much sense when you know who their coach might be. That's true. Mays says, one thing individuals haven't taken into account that Hector may have a plan to get a team for Houston, rebuild a brand. Who knows? I'm glad that Mays brings it up because that's exactly what I'm getting ready to lead into. So a few other targets that Scump may be thinking about. First one for me after EnVy or alongside EnVy would be the overwhelming 100 Thieves, but they aren't currently labeled in to be a franchise for next season. Next, I don't know any details about that. Honestly, I really don't. I have no idea what 100 Thieves' current spot is. I think depending on where they would be in terms of franchising, that has to be an option for him. Obviously, a great friend of all the guys on 100 Thieves. You've got a really good brand there. Obviously, he and Nadeshot's history together is great. So I think for me, 100 Thieves would be an ideal goal. However, they're not even in the conversation as of yet. They're not even guaranteed to be in. And speaking of brands that aren't guaranteed to be in, it's also important to see where Hex goes, right? Where does Hector want to find himself at? Is he going to be in franchising for next year? Now, there is a rumor that's going on right now that he could be working alongside with Lee Zybin, the man who purchased the Houston Outlaws from Immortals, who bought out Infinite Esports, the parent company in Optic Gaming. So this actually could have some legs to it, depending. And I find it very interesting. Lee Zybin, the man who purchased the Houston Outlaws, based on his Twitter, reached out to a few high-level celebrities talking on how he can maybe purchase a Call of Duty spot along with an Overwatch League spot. So obviously he has the Houston Outlaws. He's already based in Houston. He clearly is interested in Call of Duty based off of his Twitter, which by no means is the most professional thing. So that could also be an option. But this could also be the freedom Hex is looking for. This could also be a spot that will attract the current Optic players. One of those being Scump. So this could be somewhat of an indicator. And I think there's still a lot to be done, but I think right now, realistically, EnVy is the best option, and at the very least, one of his targets. And I think for me, it's very obvious. Like it's incredibly obvious that this is the brand that everybody is looking at. This, for me, at this moment, is the pinnacle. You have a brand that has been here since day one, a brand that is backed by Hastro, who is considered to be one of the best people in all of the Call of Duty scene, a great GM, someone who has done franchising right. And if you are coming from, and there's a lot of players out there right now who have dealt with the issues of organizations, either high level or low level. There was a lot of guys this year who I've even talked to who said, I just want some stability. I just want a brand where I don't have to worry about anything. This would be a brand where you don't have to worry about much. You don't have to worry about hardly anything for me, which makes a ton of sense. The miner says even 100T players are wanting to join EnVy for next season. Mace came out and said, agreed. I think that 25 million is such an insane investment for little to no information about how the league will function. Yes, the orgs and players have more info, but fan bases are probably the most important of a successful are part of a successful start to franchising. I agree with that to a certain extent. Like I don't know all the details personally behind that $25 million price. I'd assume that came with the conversation as well. I'd assume that was a meeting of some sort that maybe gave them some more stability. But like you said, it is a lot to dive into, a lot for these brands to want to invest in. So that also kind of adds to the conversation of 100 Thieves. Obviously, Lee Zybin and Hector, are they planning to work out together? Or is Hector maybe thinking about joining a different brand? Maybe even the Boys in Blue. For me, that would make a ton of sense. I'm saying it now. Possibly we'll be talking about that one in the future. But I think right now, and kind of speaking quickly on the future of this EnVy lineup, because that for me is one of the biggest factors of, in Scump's mind, okay, who are we getting, right? Who are we thinking about getting, right? Or talking more specifically on EnVy, we have Hook, Pharaoh, Egg, Silly, Decimate, and Assault are all by definition restricted free agents. I talked to Decimate really quickly in DMs this morning. He did let me know that he is a restricted free agent right now. So all those players are. And this tells me that EnVy currently is looking for a facelift. They want a total different rebrand. They are rocking out Hook, and they want to go with this guy for the long haul, which is what I talked about. A lot of people said, oh, they're going to loan him to Splice. They're probably going to go ahead and let him take, kind of like basically test him out a little bit, see how he works. And for me, it was like, no, there's no way they're doing that. There's no way they're getting rid of their franchise man, a guy who has played multiple FPSs on their organization. So imagine who they go for if they do lock down Scump. They do get Gunless off of that loan, along with who they already have. I mean, the possibilities are honestly endless. Like, you get a dedicated IGL. Do we get a young, talented Slayer? Do we work on substitutes, by the way, to improve Search and Destroy? Who do we look at? What do we look at for a coach? Who do we look? I mean, there's so many different things to be kind of considering right now. I mean, do you look towards someone like TJ, but then again, you have three kind of SMG-minded players? I mean, just imagine TJ and Hook alongside each other, Scump kind of in the mix. Maybe there's so many different things you can kind of look at. Maybe you look toward Dashy, an incredible AR talent alongside Gunless, which would probably blow my entire mind. Do you look towards Simp? Do you look toward Octane, Arcides? I mean, is United going to be involved? There are so many different possibilities and so many players who, if you tell me we have Scump, we have Hook, and we have Gunless, are going to only want to go to the brand who you could consider, if everything was a clean slate, nobody had any players, this would probably be the preferred brand of choice, as long as 100 Thieves aren't don't have their hat in the ring as of yet. Like I said, I think there's so many options, and I think if they got those three players to start, they instantly become a fan favorite. Instantly most popular pro in the world, along with two unbelievable talents, the future of Call of Duty esports, and Gunless, who I think will be a future Hall of Famer along with Hook. I know we don't have a defined Hall of Fame, but I kind of have it in my mind, but they'll probably be there soon. And people also don't realize the worth that Scump has in his brand. Like, we kind of forget about it a little bit. If you are a dedicated Call of Duty esports fan, you just think, oh yeah, Scump, like, cool, he's on Optic, right? I mean, that makes sense. Obviously a really big brand, but you kind of forget the fact that he is the most popular player in all of Call of Duty esports. Literally, he is the brand, and that is what franchisers are looking for. Whenever I brought up at the beginning of the year how important it is for players to grow their brand throughout this season, it was because of franchising. If you have the same and equal skill to a player as you, but you have a brand or he has a brand, they're going to choose the brand guy, right? They're going to go for the face, as I have labeled it, over someone with skill. Or even if you're close, they're going to go with someone who has more to offer, a bigger arsenal in terms of what they can provide this organization, which Mace correctly called out, is worrisome because you don't have a whole lot of guarantees. So you're really rooting on having a fan base, which in turn brings you sponsorships, or, vice versa. Those work in tandem together. So like I said, I think it's going to be really important. I'm curious to see what EnVy kind of has in mind, but I think for me at least, this makes sense. This makes total sense for Scump to want to try and go over to Dallas. He's based here, and I know I kind of covered it already, but I think for me, that is the overwhelming conversation to have right now, as I think that is the organization that everyone wants to go to right now, because we still don't know about 100 Thieves, we still don't know about FaZe Clan, we still don't know about what is going on right now with Lee Zybin and Hector, if they're trying to work something out with that one or not, but still, the only guaranteed is EnVy in my mind right now for Scump. Also, really quickly, before I do close out the show, I want to give a huge shout out to Ogre 2. The Florida franchise has picked him up as the GM. I know I talked about that at the beginning of the show today. Massive shout out to the GOAT FPS man himself, Ogre 2, for being the GM there, previous GM of Reciprocity. So congratulations to him. Really excited about that opportunity and for the future announcements that we're going to see. But guys, I really do appreciate you all for coming in. I know last week we were talking about how we had an hour-long show, and I think it ended up being like an hour and 10 minutes. So make sure, if you guys haven't done so already, as Prediction has talked about in the chat, to give us a follow here on Twitch. Follow us here on twitch.tv/Prediction Esports. Give us a follow as well on Twitter at Prediction. And also feel free to follow myself at Lando as well. It was a fantastic show today. We covered some very interesting subjects, right? We talked about the Modern Warfare Alpha, how the future of that could possibly involve when it comes into franchising next year, what the keys are possibly for Call of Duty Modern Warfare, or just Call of Duty in general, to continue its life cycle, which also is probably more of a negative, but I still feel like there are possibilities to keep the game afloat, to make it an exciting title for years to come, and to make it an exciting title for the first year of franchising, which I think is way more important than a lot of people are kind of giving it credit for. But like I said, guys, if you haven't done so already, if you're listening to us on iTunes, we greatly appreciate it. Feel free to leave us a rating, and also feel free to check us out. Right, the Reload is live here every single Tuesday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern time. So make sure, if you did miss out, to come around and join us in the live chat and get involved. And like I said, guys, thank you so much for catching us, for watching the Reload today. VODs, YouTube videos will be uploaded as well. Like I said, you can feel free to check us out on iTunes, but that's going to do it for me today. I greatly appreciate everyone for tuning in, and we will see you all next time.